My friend Steve Clements. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
You were just talking about the weather.
Yeah.
We had Lad Marsh Bird Festival on this weekend. I had my wife and I have a station that we hang out at for 6 hours, from 6 in the morning to 12 noon. It was okay until about 8.
And then
it opened up, and it rained for 4 hours. We had a surprising number of people who came through, and I'm really glad that I brought a canopy, and some chairs to sit down underneath the canopy. It was one of the wettest days I can remember in 20 years of the festival.
Wow.
So
that always makes it challenging.
It does, but if you're fortunately, I was dressed right.
Yeah.
I had good rubber boots on, and I had several layers of clothes and a raincoat, and the outside got wet, but the inside was warm.
Yeah. Several years ago, when we would travel with LeGrand High School and do their out-of-town games, they had a playoff game in Coos Bay. That's not the school. What is it anyhow?
North Bend?
North Bend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we went and it was just Tanya and I, and we hired a play-by-play guy from that area. And we set up in a 10 by 10 canopy because it looked like it was going to rain. And Tanya ran the camera, and I was doing the controls, and in the middle of the game, I could see something in front of the camera, and it just looked funny. I didn't know what it was, and I looked over, and the rain is pouring off of the canopy in a stream in front of the camera. It was just, it was the most miserable. I mean, we got through it, but it was like crazy.
It's no fun, but it's so much for forecasts.
Yeah. So hey, how you doing?
I'm well. Just been hanging out. We had budget hearings last week, which I'm part of. Interesting stuff, but nothing earth-shattering. Other than that, trying to get out on the bicycle every once in a while and planning some stuff for the summer. And it's.
Is it weird being? Because for those people that don't know, the city of LeGrand and every organization, the county does this. They put together, all of the departments put together a budget based upon, hey, this is what we spent last year, and these are the goals that we have for next year, and these are the things, and they submit a budget that goes through a process, and then that budget, which is gathered together by mostly administration, and is evaluated by the city council. It's doubled its size. It's the city council, and then they add to it
7. It's 7 councilors and seven budget commission members.
But these are public people that chose to be a part of this budget committee.
Yes. And I, after I stepped down from the council in 2022, I applied to be on the budget committee.
Yeah.
And so I'm on the committee now as a citizen.
Right. Is that a different place? I mean, how do you think about
it is. And I think some of that came up during this last budget session, which was surprising to me. But it never really occurred. It was never really an overt discussion. That there is, I think, a distinction between the council members of the budget committee and the non-council members of the budget committee. Councilors are elected by the people of LeGrand to make policy.
Right.
And part of the budget is policy. And I look at the role of the citizen member of the budget committee as not to be, to review the budget, to have a conversation about where money is being spent, but not to set policy. Because I wasn't elected to do that.
Right.
I was appointed by the council to fill an oversight and a review position, and it is kind of weird because my all the time I've spent on council, I did policy, and I kind of want to automatically jump into that.
By policy meaning, this is the direction I think the city should go.
Right. And we should be hiring 5
this.
more people
Right,
to do
right.
these things in the city.
Right.
And I, if a council member of the Budget Commission brought that up, I think the proper role of of a citizen member of the commission is to say, all right, where in the budget, how do we fund this?
Yeah.
Where does the money come from if we have a fixed amount of resources? And now you're saying you want 5 more people.
Right.
How do you do that?
Right.
And does that shuffling make sense? So
Yeah, and when I was running for commissioner, I looked pretty carefully into how the county did this too. And, I mean, and it's very similar. I think the thing that is always, the thing that is difficult for the citizen, I think, is to have input into how money is being spent before it's budgeted. Because, because just the nature of the budgets and the nature of this process is it is so complicated and huge. And I mean, the binders that you are looking at are that thick.
yes,
And every section, and the county has very much the same way.
right.
And so the most logical way to do it is, how did we do it last year, and how do we want to do it different than what we did last year?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's the logical
You have
way.
a starting point with the
Right.
previous year. And Brent, you're right. It's not an easy it's not an easy process to understand.
Right.
And it's not an easy process to plug in as a citizen and to comment, because starting in January, typically, at least in the city, this has been the trend. Starting in January of, which is about halfway through the budget cycle for a
Right.
fiscal year, the city councilors meet and they talk about their goals and their priorities for the year. City staff, including the city manager, takes that information and then they start to work up their own individual budgets.
Right.
There really is no place in that process for citizens to plug in, except at council meetings in general, when there's always public comment sections and people can come and talk about what they think. But really the role for public input is during the budget hearings itself.
Right.
And we have gone years where we ask for public input or public comment, and there's no one there.
Right. But
And that doesn't surprise me because it
Right.
is complicated.
Right, but from knowing what I know now, I mean, and I totally understand the why all of this happens, but by the time the public has an opportunity to comment, or even a level of a person, I mean, so even though the budget committee is not there to make policy, okay, and we saw this happen over the two nights of meetings. There were comments from the budget people about policy, okay, but by then it was really too late.
Yeah.
Right, and so then how much less important or how much less influence would somebody standing at the podium have?
You say that, and you're right. How much less? It really depends on the activity of the budget or
Yeah.
the direction of the budget.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember.
I do.
But
I know what
years
you're talking
back,
about.
yeah,
Yeah.
where there was talk about closing the pool,
Right.
and that happened on the Monday night, or
And it wasn't really even talk. It was
what would happen if.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And what would we save? And okay, and how long? Would you still have to maintain the pool and all of those things? And what happened the next
Man,
night?
there were
There were
20 people.
20 people in there supporting the pool.
Right.
And so, and I think if you were to say, "Gee, we're going to cut we have to cut police officers and fire because we need $500,000, and that's the easiest place to get it. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I would imagine there would be a number of people who
Yeah.
came up the next night and said, "Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We don't agree with that." And then the conversation would be, all right, if we need to cut $500,000, first off, that should have been done, recognized and done much earlier.
Right.
And a good budget officer like Robert Strope or whoever the city manager is at the time would have said, okay, here are some alternatives.
Right.
Here are ways to cut the $500,000 without eliminating police or fire.
Right.
Right. That means you might have to take out a position or two at the library. You may have to reduce
Right.
pool hours. You might have to cut back on seasonal park employees. But they would give you alternatives to supporting that $500,000
Right.
cut without going to police and fire.
Right.
Because I would recognize, I think rightfully so, that the council would prioritize those positions over
Yeah.
other city services. So anyway,
No, and I guess, and one thing I think that is amusing a little bit is that, so it came down to it, and the city council was looking for $500,000, something like that.
Yeah,
this
400,
this
I think.
budget committee. Okay, yeah.
400,000, I think.
Right. And I mean, that was resolved essentially by saying we're going to put $400,000 less into our savings account for future expenditures.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, and that is a little bit like the what that reminds me of is somebody who has, I don't know, a couple of $1 million in bonds and savings that they're living on in their retirement, but they're trying to make themselves live on what they're getting for Social Security. And then if an extra expense comes up, it's like, oh, well, I'm broke. I'm trying to live on my Social Security. It's like, well, yeah, but you do have a couple of $1 million that you could draw from, and
Right. It is, yeah.
you kind of get where I'm going there.
Yeah, I do. I mean, and I think one of the things that we've failed to do, not just at a city level, but I think at other governmental levels, we failed to reserve enough monies for the capital maintenance and the asset maintenance that we
Right.
have. And so, buildings, the HVAC systems on buildings go out, and the roof needs to be repaired, and it needs to be painted to make it look good. And if you don't save for those
Right.
things,
Right.
and you prepare for them, then boy, oh boy, how do you do it?
Right.
Right?
Right, and I don't disagree with that, but sometimes the savings become so routine that it's almost hidden, and it's not that anybody's hiding it on purpose, and it's just so then something comes up. It's like, well, where are we going to get another $200,000 for an officer that we need, or whatever the case might? Or
Right.
I mean, then
I think
yeah.
in this case, what happened, and the council made policy. They said if the ending fund balance is greater than the amount we anticipated, so if they said 23 or 25, 26, 24, 25, which was last fiscal year, that we would have $2 million in ending fund balance that hadn't got spent, but we ended up with $3 million.
Okay.
They would take that $1 million and divvy it up, and they would give. And the policy I think the council made, and I don't remember it verbatim, was some of it would go to streets and roads, out of general fund. Some would go to streets and roads.
Yeah.
Some would go to capital improvement, and some would go back into general fund.
Yeah.
Right? And so what they did instead this year, and I think we've done this in the past, instead of taking all of that money, they took $400,000 and said, okay, we're going to still fund roads, right? We're still going to give money to the roads, but we're not going to put as much into the capital improvement fund,
Right.
or the capital maintenance fund. And it's like, okay, well, that means there's less there for the future. So,
Right, but I don't. Yeah, I wish that would have. I don't think that. I mean, there was a lot of anxiety in that room in order to make that happen.
yeah,
And I I, in my opinion, it should have happened a little bit more automatically.
Yep. Well, it should have, and
Yeah.
I think that because that policy or that resolution was
Yeah.
in place, that's the way the budget was prepared.
Right.
With that understanding, and I think we heard Robert say this, Robert Strope say this, that if that's no longer the council's desire,
Right.
they should repeal that resolution and make a new one or make a new policy so
Yeah.
that money stays. So
Right, and I think that, I mean, and Robert made it, I mean, Robert is very good at the budgeting books. I mean, you call him, what do you call it? The manager, the budget manager.
it's a budget officer.
Yeah, I mean, and he is very good at that.
Yep.
And so, I mean, and what he repeatedly said was, I will prepare the budget the way the city council tells me to prepare it.
Yep.
Okay. And I totally believe that.
Yep.
You know, the problem is that it's hard for the city council to really have all of that knowledge to direct
Yep.
the budget to be prepared in a particular manner. And I see that on the looks of the faces of the council members. They're like, wait a minute, we're not going to, or wait a minute, we don't, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's not, I mean, that happens in systems everywhere.
Right.
Because somebody's brand new, there's so much information for them to gather. They presume, and so I'm just saying the whole process is really difficult because the answer to my question earlier is how does the public really have input into this? Well, they really have input into that and who they elect on the city council.
Right.
And those members should express their desires.
Yep.
Okay. Or express the desires that they're representing. Yeah.
Yes.
But that takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of I mean, they don't want to look stupid.
Right.
They don't want to, just blurt something out. Well, why don't we?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the role. Counselors are not professional city managers.
Right.
Or they're not. They don't have the. Very few of them have a real full grasp of what's going on in the city. I never had it. And I was on council for a long time, and what I had was what I had garnered from council meetings and conversations with department directors, and so I had a better understanding of what's going on out there. But I don't know how to run a public works department.
Right.
I don't know how to run a police department. I was always very thankful that we had professionals who did that.
Right.
And so I could breathe easy.
Yeah.
That and respect what they presented to us as a budget and said, this is what I need, this is what
Yeah.
I'm asking for within the confines of what we set as goals and priorities as a council.
Yeah.
It's even tougher for a person to walk off the street and have good questions or knowledgeable questions about the budget.
Yeah.
Because it is complicated, but I think the process that we have is as transparent as it can possibly be. You want to see the budget, you can have a copy.
Right.
You want to be involved with the conversation, you can be on the commission.
Yeah.
You want to have public input, talk to a counselor.
Yeah.
And they will represent you to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
So
I think it's the big moves that sometimes, and I mean, I'm thinking back to and I don't know this, how did the swimming pool get built and created? How did the library get, both of those are fairly new facilities.
yes, yeah.
Okay, but some council member or some body said, hey, this is a necessary thing and we got to figure out how to.
Right.
I mean, those are big moves that
Yeah.
had to happen some
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
The library, we benefited from a $1 million bequest from, I think, Tom and Maxine Cook. Mm-hmm. Left in their estate $1 million towards a new library, specifically. Yeah. We took that and leveraged what we had if I remember correctly, the library was built without any bond measure or increase in taxes.
Yeah.
We had money in a capital reserve fund, which had accumulated over a number of years. We had $1 million of extra money that was given to the city. And we also had developed a relationship between, at that time, with the Oregon Dental Insurance, ODS, who built
The pavilion.
the pavilion.
with
Yeah,
the-
yeah. And so they helped to buy the land from Safeway. They donated a portion, I think, to the city to build the library. We had the money in reserve, and we had a donation, and a bequest, and it happened. It was
Right.
miraculous. I mean, it was, aside from having a flat roof, which we told the architects, no, it's not going to work. That's what we ended up with. The fire station was almost along the same lines.
Yeah.
We got, and the pool, we did some legwork ahead of time, and we surveyed the people in the city, and we found out what they wanted and what they supported within a pool, and then we put a bond measure out. I think that was the last bond measure the city actually passed, and it was a 20-year bond measure for the pool, and people supported it, and they passed it, and it's been more than 20 years, so it's all paid off.
No, but those are big, and you take like the library, the expense of the building is just the very beginning.
Yeah,
You're expanding that entire department for the next.
yeah. And we had to
However
add
long,
more people,
right, yeah.
and there was some budget requests this year to save put a bit of money in the library budget into the reserve,
Yeah.
so that they could, repair the roof at some point, put a new HVAC in, put new computers in there,
Yeah.
put new carpeting in. I was surprised when Carrie mentioned how many people pass through the library. 50 to 60,000 visitors a month.
Wow.
That's a lot of people,
Yeah.
and I think that says a lot for the use of that building and for the service that it provides.
Yep.
So,
But 50 to 60, that's 2,000 a day. There's no way 2,000
okay,
people walk through that
I must
door
have
a
been.
day.
Maybe it was 5 to 6,000.
Okay, there I was like,
Okay.
I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm like,
Thanks for-
60,000 people. Like, I don't see 60,000 people in a year here.
Well, that would be like 3 times the population of the,
yeah,
of
I'm
the
like, I
county.
was trying
Thank
to
you for that
comprehend
catch.
I'm like, my
Thank you for that catch. Good, reality hits. 5 to 6,000 a day.
That sounds more.
That still is a lot.
Yeah,
A
5 to
month,
6,000
yeah.
a month. It's still a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
It serves, and that's everybody in the county.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to come in and use that building.
Right.
So
And everybody in the county, but it's
funded by the citizens of LeGrand.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to pay if you live outside
Yeah,
of the
there is-
city
yeah,
limits.
yeah.
If you live within the city limits, you have to have a piece of ID,
Right.
mail, saying you live within the LeGrand city limits, and then there's a charge if you live in the county outside of the city limits.
Right. So and that helps, but
Yeah.
it is the bulk of the money comes from
Yeah.
citizens in the city. So
Well, let's.
let's transition a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise
How are you doing? What are you doing?
What am I doing? I was pretty active in the Ladmarsh Bird Festival. I'm a member of the board member of the Friends of Ladmarsh, and so we start our planning for that in January of the year.
Now, what is Friends of Ladmar? What do they do?
It's a small nonprofit that advocates for use and management of Ladmarsh. Most of the members who are on it are non-hunters. It would be great if there was a hunter out there who wanted to serve on the board. We would really appreciate having that perspective because, much of the use on the marsh is for hunting, for pheasant and duck and other things. So, that starts in January, and we roll with it as hard and fast. And it just, as you can imagine, the closer you get to an event, the more time you have to put in.
So what do they do? What does let's back. Who manages Ladmarsh?
Ladmarsh is
What management is involved in that?
Right.
Yeah.
There's about 6,100 acres out on Lad Marsh. Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife
Okay.
is the management agency. They have areas that they plant to, I think, to corn and other things like that. They have areas that they cut hay on, and then that hay is some rancher or farmer does the cutting. They have the city of LeGrand actually owns or is partnered with the marsh because ultimately all the sewage, treated sewage, goes out there.
Right.
So instead of going right, years ago it used to go into the Grand Ron River. Now it goes out to the marsh and it filters, it makes its way through ponds and ditches and ultimately gets to the river and it's clean.
Yeah.
So then Friends of Lad Marsh have been around for, a lot longer than I've been on the board, but they serve as an advocate. We run every Saturday, the first Saturday every month, we have a bird walk. People want to come out, we take people out to the marsh or other places in the valley to bird watch. We do education stuff with kids. We do an owl night where in February or so we take people out after dark in the cold and listen for owls. We put on the marsh the festival, which is I hope this is right. I hope it's better than my numbers, about 50 to 60,000 a year. We put on one of the only bird festivals on a wildlife management area in the state of Oregon. And Salem has sent people over here multiple times to see if they can't replicate it someplace else, and they haven't been able to, as far as I know. We've got some money built up. We want to, we've talked about putting in some observation blinds, maybe more informational type of things. There's the Tule Lake Auto Tour. There's a kiosk out there that we want to put some information on. So, and then there's a festival. That's our main event for the year. I think we had close to 300 people registered.
Wow. Now, out at Lad Marsh, somewhere there's a boardwalk that goes kind of out into the middle.
Yep.
Where is that? How do you get to that?
That's off of the, if I remember the one if it's the one
I've seen pictures of it. I've never been on it actually.
If you go out to Peach Road, and you're coming, maybe halfway between the Union Highway and the airport lane, there's a auto tour road, and it's open between March 1st and July 31st, and you can drive through there, and about 3/4 of the way through there's a boardwalk that goes out.
So yeah,
Now that was put in years ago.
And I don't think I know. I don't think I've ever seen that.
You might miss it because it was put out originally over open water.
Right.
But in the interim from when it was put in until now, all that open water has been grown up into cattails.
It's on Tule Lake, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on Tule Lake. So it's a lake that has tules in it, right? But it's hard to see because it gets grown in.
Yeah.
And
but the auto tour part of it, I don't think I've.
Oh yeah, it's pretty easy to get to. Just go Peach Lane, and if you know where the fish pond is, fishing pond on Peach Lane.
I don't think I do.
So for the people out there that are familiar with that, you can go to there's a pond that the ODFW stocks with trout, and there's always a lot of people out there, and they put some big fish in that little pond. And then you go a little bit further north of there, and the auto tour takes off to the east, and it's not very long, 3/4 mile, maybe a mile.
But still,
And it's nice. We were out there. I was out there 2 days ago, and there's a sort of a wet marshy area on a big bend, and there was a woman out there sketching some of the birds wading around in the water. So I thought that was, so people are using it to watch birds, but most areas closed down quite a bit during the fall hunting season, just to give the wildlife a break and give people safety. So
yeah,
it's nice.
Okay, well, let's switch topics again a little. Let's talk about politics for a minute.
Oh, if we have to.
National politics,
We
yeah.
have to.
Mostly just from how it relates to you and I, because
Yes.
I mean, you're a Democrat, I'm
Registered
a Republican,
Democrat,
yeah. And I don't think that. I mean, I think I would call both of us thinking people. You know, I mean, we're able to think outside of our own.
Yeah.
Part, and that's. I mean, frankly, that's what made you a good mayor. is
Well,
that-
thank you.
Yeah, you know, but man, it is just so polarized.
Yeah.
Right now. I mean,
I think some of it is both you and I are willing to listen,
yeah,
and we may not necessarily agree with what we hear, but we have some respect for what we're hearing. And there was something came up here. I saw it. There was a little caption on the CHD.
yeah,
Thing that came up, and I think it comes down to this: we're all members of the same community,
yeah,
and we need to look out for each other.
right,
If there was a crisis, I can guarantee you, party affiliations would drop out, and people would come to help each other.
yeah,
It would help neighbors in Burns when it
Right.
was flooding big time. People they didn't care who you voted for. They were going to help you.
right,
Right? We're going to help fill sandbags, and we're going to help protect your home, and we're
Yeah.
going to try. That's the bottom line.
right,
And from there, it's not very difficult to keep that attitude and that sort of perspective and go up
Right.
in terms of dealing with each other politically.
Well, and I think just locally, I mean, I can't think of a single thing locally you and I would disagree about, because
Right.
because
Because we both care about our community.
right, yeah, we have this common interest in being able to take care of the local people here,
Right.
Whatever that, yeah, and so then all of that, whatever that affiliation is, it's really not relevant,
No.
at all,
No.
locally,
Right.
yeah, and
And what's funny, you say that because most of government impact is local, right? And yet where we seem to get all bent out of shape sometimes are with issues that are
really have nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
We have no control over.
we have no control. I mean, they're so high up here that there's other than writing to my representative and hoping that they'll listen to me what I'm saying and take that forward.
Yeah.
There's very little I can do to change federal policy. And that's frustrating,
Yeah.
right? So you just sit back and I found that the easiest thing to do, personally for the federal level, is just stay as informed as I can be, but not get all. Don't let it eat me up.
Well, and I think that, I mean, nobody is ever happy with their candidate. I'm not happy with Trump. I'm not happy with the person that he is, and I'm as appalled as anybody is.
Well,
From time to time,
Right.
Right. And so, but had it been, had we talked about this 4 years ago, you'd have been able to say, yeah, I'm not sure Biden. I mean, you would have criticism of Biden. So
right, I got criticism of him now for
Right.
I don't know much. Again, I know only what I hear on the media.
Right.
And how much of that
Is reliable.
Is reliable. But I'm sorry to hear that he has a cancer diagnosis
Right.
of stage 4 prostate cancer. That didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And it's only been what 8 months since the election.
Yeah.
I don't.
Right. I'm getting what you're saying.
Right.
Right.
And it's like, so what'd you lie to us for?
Right. And
Right?
so the point is nobody's happy with the way that we are electing presidents in any manner,
Right.
I mean, it is super flawed.
Right.
And so then to be backed into a corner to defend somebody that I don't really want to defend,
Right.
is I mean,
It's
it's a horror.
tough.
And that and the fact that it's not relevant to local stuff.
Right.
I mean, all of those things just make
Right.
this whole situation
And
super
and
complicated.
it's I'm in an interest. I'm just going to be
Yeah.
honest with you on this. From what I know, I do not like Trump's personality. I don't like him as an individual. I think I would have a difficult time hanging out with the guy.
Yeah.
I've been watching, you know, I'm not really enamored with all his policies and or his executive orders. But in the long run, somebody else is going to get elected, and somebody else is going to overturn those executive orders, and we're just going to be sort of back
Right.
in the same general. So this, I mean,
Yeah. There's these gigantic, massive swings
yeah.
right now, one
Yeah.
way or the other.
And it used to be in our country that those swings took years.
Yeah.
And then we'd go this way, we'd go Democrat, and then we'd swing back and we'd go to Republican.
Yeah.
And now they happen every 4 years. And it's
Yeah.
hard to stay up on it. It's really hard to stay up on it. I like you. I think you're a great guy. I don't care who you vote for. And
Right.
I think and I think there's more of that out there than we give our community credit for.
Yeah.
That people that have different political views or different voting strategies can get along just fine.
Yeah.
I got a friend of mine, high school friend, and we still stay in touch, on and off. And he's way more Republican than you, Brent. and yet, I just listen to him, and I don't speak bad, and we have a reasonable conversation. And every once in a while, he gets off on it, and I'm like, I'm not gonna instigate it. I'm not gonna light him up. I find the middle road, and that's the way I go, and we get along just fine.
It's funny because I have, my own kids. I have 3 kids, and they're divided.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is, and so then the conversations. I mean, when we do have family gatherings, we don't talk about politics at all because
Smart move.
Yeah, yeah, and so, but privately we will have these conversations. And
Right.
I mean, recently I hung out with Brady, spent a couple of days with him. And, I mean, he's in his early 30s, spends a lot of time on Reddit. He's, he is, and I tell him this, is like, dude, you are no different than somebody who is 65 and spends all day in front of Fox News. You know that, right? I mean, you're drinking from one fountain.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and I get and that, I mean, and I guess that's what I preach is that you've got to. I mean, I go home and still watch national news, and I yell at the screen from time to time because I see the bent,
Yes.
but at the same time, I am hungry to be informed.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And as best as you can, given
Right.
the media source that you choose to use.
Right.
My experience, I'm going to cycle us back around to being, a former mayor and
Yeah.
being a former counselor. Every situation is so much more complicated than the media can even portray.
Yeah.
And what they do is they pick and choose,
Right.
and they try to give you a comprehensive story, but it's impossible.
Yeah.
And so, you got to take it with a grain of salt, regardless of your media source, and say, all right, I'm going to be a brave skeptic on everything that I
Yeah.
read until I know as much as I can, and even then, understand that you can never know everything. We're talking about the professionals that the city hires to run these program areas and to run and deliver our services. There's no way I chose a different profession,
Yeah.
and I can't understand all of those things. So if
Right.
I trust what you're doing, then I will get the best for the city.
Right.
And I think, and at some point, all we can do is trust the media source that we have and verify for ourselves if we don't.
Well, and I think that is when I spent that time with Brady, that was, I mean, I knew the Republican talking points, and I know the Republican talking points are created by the Republican Party. They're bent.
That's just as the Democratic
And
one.
that's exactly what I was trying to portray to Brady is like, you know that, I mean, if you just, I can't take whatever is being fed to me as literal because it's not credible.
Right.
And, I mean, it's kind of like, certainly there have been an increase in airplane incidents recently. Okay. And
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
that airplane accident that happened in DC and the people that were killed and,
Right.
First accident in, I don't know, 13 years or 20 years or whatever it might be, But because of that incident, now the news picks up every little airplane infraction or incident or whatever the case. And there are problems out there, whatever the case might be. But that doesn't change the statistics. Their airline travel is still the safest way to travel. And that's based upon the millions of people that take airplanes every day and arrive there safe.
Yeah.
And, but the point is we're colored. We're so easily colored. So now there's anxiety. I mean, really, there is. People, they're like, I don't know if I want to travel on an airplane or not. Because,
well, look what happened after 9/11.
Right, yeah.
It's like, freak out, man.
Yeah.
I'm not getting on a plane.
Yeah. And so it's just, I mean, that is how we are so easily influenced in some manner or another.
We like color. We like snap. we like pizzazz, and media knows that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I like about what you guys are doing is that you're reporting on the local stuff that matters to folks.
Yeah.
And doing the sports is, where are you going to get that now?
Yeah.
Right? One of the things we talked about when I came in is, and just sort of a transition here, is that we have a local newspaper that comes out once a week now, and it's chock-a-block full of lot of things not relative to our community because it's now regional.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it, but in two-thirds of what's in there now is not even germane to my community.
Right.
And what you guys do is hometown.
Yeah.
It's here. It's what's happening with the LeGrand High School sports and what's happening with the EOU sports. And, Commissioner Andrus was just in here, and, you're talking about what's happening at the county level.
Yeah.
And we need that.
Yeah.
Because then I can go and say, and I can verify what you're saying pretty darn easily.
Right,
and
right.
you say something that's interesting to me, well, I'm going to go check that out. And
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go attend a sports event. I can go to the high school graduation. I can go to a bird festival locally. I mean, we need solid local news,
Yeah.
because then people can verify it. Because above that, it's sensationalized.
Yeah.
It's colored.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Well, and we like longer conversations. I mean, I know that everybody wants to get the information quickly and short, but that is when information is condensed, it's really hard to not be colored in some manner or another.
Exactly.
Or you miss something, or
Yes.
whatever the case might be. And
Yes.
I mean, we like the longer conversations because somebody comes in here and they're speaking for themselves. They're not edited. We're not sound biting them. We don't have gotcha questions.
There's been no prep for this morning.
Right, yeah. But it's super organic,
Yep.
and it's truthful, and
Yeah.
it's original,
Yeah.
and all of that's
And-
why we like doing that.
And when I blow out of proportion numbers, I
You have a fact
I
checker.
get corrected instantly.
I mean, that set off an alarm.
I'm glad you did, man, because that was because in the back of my head I was going, that sounds a little high. That sounds a little high, but
Did I see 2,000 people walk through that door yesterday?
I don't think
I
no, I don't think so.
don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think we'd have enough parking.
No.
No, I don't think we have enough parking. No, I don't think so. Let's not talk about parking.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thanks.
You're welcome, Brent.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and
Yep.
I value your friendship. And
Same here.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that hopefully we'll just keep solving problems, or at least talking about problems and pushing people in the right direction.
Well,
and, yeah.
I think you and I had a conversation about this. And I don't know how much time you've got. I don't want, and
Yeah.
cut me off if you need to. You and I had a conversation about, not too long ago about forming a group of
Yeah.
people. And there were some women in town who formed a group like this, and it was the lunch backpack thing. You
Yeah.
know? And they solved an issue, and they raised money of their own, and pretty soon kids were going home with backpacks full of food because they didn't have anything otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think that was a glorious thing. There are issues in our community that could use independent thinking minds, and people willing to have a conversation across a political chasm, that could bring time and resources together to solve them that maybe the government doesn't have the ability to do. Thought came to my mind just now as I was saying this. Kevin Loveland.
Right, Loveland Safe Ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The dude did a big thing. And now it's grown so big that
Yeah.
he needs more resources than he can provide on his own. So it's a shout out.
Yeah.
If you think this is a good thing, Kevin could use some
Yeah.
support.
Yeah.
In fact, I got to get a hold of him. He had a big shindig down there, and I couldn't make it, but I want to make some effort for him.
Yeah.
We need a group like that.
Yeah.
We need 5 to 10 or 15 people who meet more or less regularly to talk about what the issues are, to figure out a way to get them solved, and in either assisting the government to do that or finding a nonprofit that can carry that load for them. So.
Well, and I think that's missing, and I
It
still want to do that. I'm still driven to kind of pull that together because the city, everybody is siloed on purpose because they have a purpose that they're having something they're trying to fix and
Right.
do. I mean,
Right.
the school district and I don't know. There's a number of different organizations, and all of them are doing good things, but there are times we just need somebody who's at the 30,000 foot level who's saying this area needs attention, and as citizens we can get together and talk about that.
Yeah.
And figure.
And what better way
Yeah.
to bridge the political gap
Yeah. Right.
than to work on an effort in your community that you can all agree needs help.
Yeah.
And then then politics goes out the window. You're going to fix this.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well,
Yeah, very
thank
good.
you for reminding me of that.